Hey gang, and welcome back. Just a reminder, you can now use the promo code MTGMudsta, all caps, at flipsidegaming.com. You'll get 10% off orders over $10 and help with the channel at the same time. Welcome back to my viewers, patrons, subscribers, and friends. Thank you for joining me in my 200th YouTube video. I thought it might be pretty cool to have a kind of throwback video, and in this week's game, I have two of the people who helped me start off making gameplay videos, Matt and Jeff, joining me. Also, there's Kevin. This week, I'm playing the new hotness that is Dralnu, and I keep a hand with Sunken Ruins, Command Tower, 2 Islands, Dimir Signet, Toxic Deluge, and Black Sun Zenith. Matt is playing his Brago deck and keeps a hand with Riftwing Cloudscape, Flooded Strand, Opt, Path to Exile, Lavinia of the 10th, Temple of the False God, and an Island. Kevin is playing my Krenko deck and keeps a hand with 2 Mountains, Buried Ruin, Illusionist Bracers, Soul Ring, Voracious Dragon, and Goblin Lookout. Lastly, Jeff is playing his Niv-Mizzet deck and keeps an Archaeomancer, 2 Mountains, Lonely Sandbar, a Preordain, and a Counterspell. Matt wins the die roll and starts us off. Matt plays a Flooded Strand, cracking it and taking 1 to go and find a Tundra. Jeff plays a Lonely Sandbar tapped and passes turn. I play an Island and cast my top deck Soul Ring, then tap the Soul Ring to cast my Dimir Signet and pass turn. Kevin also plays a Soul Ring, but before a land, cheater, and casts Illusionist Bracers. At the end of Kevin's turn, Matt casts Opt, scrying 1 and keeping it on top to draw it. Matt then plays a Plains and suspends his Riftwing Cloudscape and forgets to tap his mana. Jeff plays an Island and passes turn. I play a Sunken Ruins and pass. Kevin plays a Mountain and casts Krenko on turn 2. Matt remembers to tap his land, and Jeff stops Krenko with a Counterspell. Matt removes one of his suspend counters from the Cloudscape during his upkeep, and he plays an Island in his main phase before passing turn. Jeff plays a Mountain and casts Fabricate to go into his library and find his own Soul Ring. I play a Polluted Delta and crack it, taking 1 to go and find Fetid Pools. Kevin plays a Mountain and casts Goblin Lookout. Matt removes another suspend counter and plays an Island before casting Brago. Jeff claims to have found the medicine for Brago, but when he plays a Mountain followed by a Soul Ring, I have to wonder what his definition of medicine is. I play an Island for turn and pass. Kevin plays Buried Ruins and recasts Krenko. Matt removes the last suspend counter, bringing his Riftwing, and bounces Krenko to Kevin's hand. Matt then plays a Temple of the False God and casts Venser the Sojourner in his main phase. Moving to combat, he swings both of his creatures at Jeff for 4 damage, and Brago bounces them, which allows him to use the Riftwing ETB again to bounce Kevin's Bracers. Jeff plays a Soothsaying in his main phase and passes turn. I play a Swamp and cast Toxic Deluge, paying 4 life. Kevin responds by sacrificing the Outlook to itself for no other reason than to just do it. On Kevin's turn, he casts a Treasonous Ogre, which is money in this deck, and pays 6 life to get enough mana to recast Krenko from his hand. Kevin then passes turn. Matt remembers on his upkeep that he actually casted Planeswalker last turn, and resolves to actually use the Loyalty ability this turn. He plays an Island, and casts Chase's Mindseeker. Jeff responds by using Soothsaying to see the top 5 and see what Matt might hit. Matt then decides to target Jeff, and Jeff reveals the top 5. Matt hits Time Spiral, and we all shuffle our hands and graveyards into our libraries and draw 7. And Matt gets the added benefit of untapping some lands. Matt then pays 4 to cast Panharmonicon, which I stop with an Arcane Denial because that card should never resolve under a Brago's control. Matt then upticks Venser to bounce the Mindseeker and moves to his end of turn, returning it and targeting me. Matt picks Cryptic Command and chooses the 2 modes to draw a card and return the Signet to my hand. On Jeff's upkeep, Matt draws 2 and I draw a card, and Jeff then plays a Terrain Generator in his main phase. Jeff then brings Niv-Mizzet out to party and passes turn. I play a Command Tower and recast my Super Signet. I then cast Deep Analysis, drawing 2, and discard Silumgar's Command at the end of my turn to have 7 cards in hand. Kevin plays a Mountain and casts Goblin Chieftain. He then casts the Illusionist Bracers, and paying the rest of his mana plus 3 life to generate the last red he needs, equips the Bracers onto Krenko. He then taps Krenko, making 2 Goblins at first, and resolving the Bracers trigger. He then resolves the original trigger, making an additional 4 Goblins. Kevin then moves to combat, and he swings 4 at Venser and 1 at me. Matt chumps one of the tokens, mostly to keep the number of goblins lower, as Venser is going to die anyway. Matt plays a Prairie Stream and casts his own Soul Ring. Matt then casts a Gilded Lotus, ramping for days, before moving to combat. He swings the Mindseeker at Kevin for 4 damage, and in his second main phase, he casts End Hostilities, which wipes the board and takes out the Bracers. Jeff plays a Terramorphic Expanse for his land for turn, and cycles Forgotten Cave. He then cracks the Terramorphic and passes turn. I redraw and play my Polluted Delta, cracking it to go and find Sunken Hollow. I then cast Swarm Intelligence and pay 3 life and 2 mana to flashback Deep Analysis. I get to copy it with Swarm Intelligence, drawing 2 sets of 2. I discard at the end of my turn and pass to Kevin. Kevin casts a Skirk Prospector in his main phase and casts Reforce's Soul. We all dump our hands and draw a new 7 cards. Kevin then drops a Mountain and casts Ruby Medallion before passing turn. Matt plays a Plains and casts Chancellor of the Spires. He targets Kevin's Reforge the Souls, and with the trigger on the stack, I cast Mystical Tutor. Matt uses this as an opportunity to cast Venser in response to that, and bounces my Swarm Intelligence back to my hand. Jeff also decides to brainstorm while I'm searching for my instant or sorcery. I grab Yogg's Will and put it on top of my library. We then dump our hands and draw a new 7, again. Kevin claims to have found some fiery draws, while I am stuck with my new hand of hot garbage. With nothing else, Matt passes turn and Jeff uses Soothsaying for 2. Jeff plays an Academy Ruins and casts an Izzet Signet in his first main phase. He then casts a Future Sight, revealing Spell Crumple off the top, and passes turn. I also play an Academy Ruins for my turn as well, but with nothing else to do, I pass turn. Kevin plays a Mountain and only has to pay 1 for Dragon Fodder. He then casts Grenzo Havoc Razor and pays 1 to cast Ashling's Prerogative. Jeff isn't a fan of this and casts Spell Crumple to put it and the enchantment on the bottom of their libraries. Moving to combat, Kevin swings the Skirk Prospector at me for 1. He then uses the Grenzo trigger to goad Matt's Chancellor and passes turn. Matt plays an Island and casts a Conjurer's Closet. I cast a Forbidden Alchemy with a spell in the stack, and keeping a card, the spell resolves. Matt then swings the Chancellor at Jeff for 5 as he has to, and Matt casts Lavinia the 10th, which detains anything non-land that costs 4 or less in his second main phase. With the detain trigger on the stack, I cast Curtain's Call to take out Lavinia and the Chancellor. This is a bit of a misplay as it still allows Matt to use his Closet trigger at the end of turn, and he bounces Venser, who returns Future Sight to Jeff's hand. Jeff pays 5 to cast a Gilded Lotus in his main phase, and recasts his Future Sight, flipping Vandal Blast. I play an Inventor's Fair and cast Demonic Tutor to go and find a card. I then pay 6 to cast Rise from the Tides, which nets me a nice 19 tapped 2/2 zombie tokens. I then pass turn. Kevin plays a Flamekin Village for his land for turn, which comes into play tapped as he has no elemental. He then casts a Goblin War Marshal who brings a friendly Goblin token with him. Matt plays a Windswept Heath for his land for turn, and moves straight through to his end step, using a Closet trigger to bounce Venser. This in turn bounces one of my tokens. Jeff then dumps 5 mana into Soothsaying at the end of Matt's turn to try and find an answer. Jeff draws for turn, playing an island and forgetting to reveal the top card of his library. Shame on you, Jeff. He then plays long-term plans to find a card and put it third from the top. He puts the card in and remembers to reveal, showing a Windfall. Jeff then casts a Faithless Looting, revealing Evacuation off the top before discarding 2 cards. Jeff then casts the Evacuation, and Kevin sacrifices 3 goblins while his spell is on the stack, to float 3 red mana to pay for his Chaos Warp. Matt then cracks his Windswept Heath to get a Hallowed Fountain, while Jeff has to shuffle in his Future Sight. He shuffles up and reveals an island, and I start my turn. I play a Flooded Strand, cracking it and taking 1 to go and find an island. My library is now as big as my graveyard, which is fantastic for a deck like mine, and I cast Archaeomancer to return Dark Petition to my hand. I then cast said Dark Petition, gaining 3 black mana, and tutor for a card. I then use the mana from Dark Petition and 2 more blue to cast Metallurgic Summonings, but Matt Vensers it back to my hand. Kevin plays a Mountain and pays 7 to cast Krenko. He then casts Mogg War Marshal, gaining a Goblin token, and Kevin pays 1 mana to cast Goblin Bombardment. Jeff decides now is his time to cast his copy of Venser and puts the spell back into Kevin's hand. Matt plays an island and casts Brago for 6. Moving to his end step, he bounces Venser once again and returns Krenko to Kevin's hand. Kevin pays the 1 to use Flamekin Village and gives Krenko haste, before tapping Krenko to create 3 Goblin tokens. Krenko then goes back to Kevin's hand, and at the end of turn, Jeff uses Soothsaying for 2. Jeff casts an Expedition map and Lightning Greaves during his turn, and plays a Temple of Epiphany to scry 1. He keeps it on top, and we see a Mind Moil hit the table. Jeff then casts Windfall and resolves his Mind Moil trigger, but as he has no cards to put on the bottom, he doesn't do anything. Matt then decides he has to use it or lose it, and he casts Reality Shift, targeting my Archaeomancer. I take the lesson to heart and decide to use my own removal, casting Snuff Out by paying 4 life to kill Brago. We then move to discarding our hands and draw 5. Jeff then casts Keranos, God of Storms. He resolves his Mind Moil, and he puts some boots on Venser, and with nothing else passes turn. I play an island for turn and cast Fabricate during my first main phase. I grab Swiftfoot Boots and cast them, followed by Dralnu. I then pay 1 to equip the Dralnu, but Matt has other ideas and casts Restoration Angel, who bounces Venser, who bounces Dralnu back to my hand. On Kevin's upkeep, he doesn't pay the Echo cost, and Mog War Marshal dies, giving Kevin a token. He then casts Gauntlet of Power, naming Red, and Kevin drops a Metallic Mimic, naming Goblins. Kevin then casts Burn at the Stake, which would have been brutal if he'd been able to target Dralnu, but he instead taps 6 creatures as part of the cost. He deals 18 damage to Jeff, and passes turn. Matt plays a Mana Crypt before he casts a Reflector Mage in his first main phase, who bounces a Metallic Mimic back to Kevin's hand. Matt then casts Oblivion Ring to exile Jeff's Keranos, and swings Venser at Kevin and Restoration Angel at Jeff. At the end of turn, Matt closets the Angel, who bounces the Venser, who bounces the Mind Moil back to Jeff's hand. Jeff plays a Sulphur Falls for turn and gets down to business by recasting Niv-Mizzet. Kevin, however, doesn't feel like taking 1,000,000 damage every time we wheel, and he stops the dragon cold with a Pyroblast. Jeff did not expect that, and the dragon goes back to his command zone. Jeff then casts a Worn Power Stone and a Crystal Ball. Done with his artifacts, Jeff then flashes back Mystic Retrieval to return Counterspell to his hand. I gain 1 on my upkeep thanks to the Fair, and I play Myron the Moaning Well for my land for turn before casting Dralnu once more. I pay 1 to try and equip, but Matt has Ghostly Flicker, bouncing the Restoration Angel and the Reflector Mage. He bounces Dralnu back to my hand with the Reflector Mage trigger, and the Restoration Angel flickers Venser to bounce Kevin's Gauntlet of Power. I then crack my Inventor's Fair to go and search for an artifact, and I grab a Crystal Shard and cast it before passing turn. Kevin hits his land for turn and recasts Gauntlet of Power, naming Red. Kevin then attempts to recast Krenko and is thrilled when it resolves. Moving to combat, he swings 3 tokens at Jeff and 2 at me. Jeff and I each block 1 token, and in response to our declare blocks, Kevin gives Krenko haste, tapping the commander to make another 6 tokens. The end result is that Jeff takes 4 while I take 2, and Kevin loses 2 tokens. Matt rolls for his crypt, taking 3 when he fails. He plays at Adarka Wastes for his land for turn, and drops Sour of Temptation to steal Krenko. Matt then swings what he can at me for 7 points of damage, and at the end of his turn, he flickers his Angel with the Closet to flicker Venser, returning Kevin's Gauntlet once more. At the end of turn, Jeff scries 2 with the Crystal Ball. He puts both on the bottom, and looks at the top 3 with Soothsaying before starting his turn. Jeff recasts Niv-Mizzet in his main phase, and gives us all a thumbs up when it resolves. I try and bounce it back to his hand with the Shard when Jeff tries to put the boots on Niv, but he easily pays 1 for it. Jeff then redrops a Mind Moil, and casts a Wheel of Fortune. This triggers Mind Moil, and Jeff puts 3 on the bottom, and draws 3. He does 3 damage to Kevin, and we then all discard our hand and draw 7. Jeff then does another 7 damage to Kevin, and that's all she wrote for Jeff's turn. I play a Volrath Stronghold and cast my own Gilded Lotus. I then cast Dig Through Time, exiling cards so it only costs 2 blue, and keep 2 cards of the 7 I see. I then cast Dralnu once more, and Matt tries to counter it. I cast Frantic Search with Counterspell in the stack, but fail to find a response, and Dralnu goes back to my command zone. I then cast a Mana Bolt and a Mind Stone back to back before passing turn. Kevin pays 2 to cast Goblin King during his first main phase, not a card Jeff wants to see. Kevin then overloads Vandal Blast, and Jeff taps Niv-Mizzet to deal 1 to me. Kevin then casts Shared Animosity, and pays 3 to cast Purphoros. Kevin then pumps once with Purphoros, and moving to combat, he swings 4 goblins at Jeff, and 5 of them at Matt. With the Shared Animosity triggers on the stack, Jeff casts Izzet Charm to deal 2 damage to the Goblin King. He has to resolve Mind Moil's trigger first, and Jeff puts 6 cards on the bottom, drawing 6 cards. He puts a target on each of the ones swinging at him, and 2 of the ones going at Matt. The Izzet Charm then resolves killing the king, and a lot of goblins die. The 2 remaining ones headed at Matt still get pumped, we believe, and Matt puts the Sour in front of one of it to kill it, and takes 10 damage. Matt plays a Plains and casts Preordain. He scries 2 and puts 1 on top and 1 on the bottom. He then casts a Mana Vault and a Seagate Oracle. He keeps 1 card and puts the 1 on the bottom. Then he casts Jace the Mind Sculptor. He uses Jace's 0 ability to brainstorm, looking for an answer. Matt then casts a Cryptic Command, drawing a card and bouncing Jeff's Fencer. He then gets to swing for Lethal at Jeff and takes him out of the game. I pay 4 mana to cast a Thran Dynamo in my main phase and drop a Propaganda to keep Kevin away before passing turn. Kevin plays a Mountain for his turn, and Kevin asks me how many counters I have in hand, to which I reply with 4. Kevin then sacrifices his Berry Ruin to return Coat of Arms, casting the pumping artifact as soon as he can. Kevin decides Krenko needs more friends, and taps his commander to generate 3 more. This triggers Purphoros, and Matt and I take 6. Moving to combat, Kevin pumps his goblins with Purphoros, and swings 3 goblins at Matt, putting him to 1 after all the triggers from Shared Animosity resolve. Kevin then casts Thornbite Staff and passes a turn. Matt activates Jace during his first main phase to brainstorm. He then drops a Plains and casts a Feldar Guardian, bouncing Jace. Matt then uses Jace's brainstorm again and casts an Opt, scrying the card to the bottom as he knows what it is. Matt then casts a Sun Titan to bring back Seagate Oracle, digging some more. Matt then moves to combat, swinging the Restoration Angel at Kevin for 3. In Matt's second main phase, he casts the Riftwing Cloudskate and bounces Perforos back to Kevin's hand. For my turn, I draw a card that's going to help me win the game, and I cast Snapcaster Mage, who resolves and puts flashback on Yawgmoth's Will. I then cast the Will, and cast Mana Vault and Soul Ring from my graveyard before casting High Tide. I then float 6 blue mana with my islands, and cast Frantic Search, untapping some lands and exiling the cards I discard. I then resolve a Paradox Engine, and move through the motions of casting my graveyard and netting a bunch of mana from abusing mana rocks by tapping them and untapping them thanks to the Paradox Engine every time I cast a spell. I then finish off the table with a Lethal Ensanguinate and win the game. Game review time. So I definitely think I stole that win, seeing how I was able to sit back and let Kevin and Jeff be more bigger threats than I was. My opponents were more inclined to deal with each other, and I was able to let things slide until I was able to have enough pieces to win. Paradox Engine and Dralnu or Yawgmoth's Will is a powerful combination of cards, and they have to be answered immediately. But let's face it, by turn 15 a lot of answers had been used. I didn't expect Kevin to hang around or be as big of a threat as he was when he was facing against 3 blue players. He played Krenko quite conservatively, and he was using the tap ability on other people's turns as opposed to his own, which I think was a smart move. That Pyroblast against Niv-Mizzet, however, was just beautiful. Matt's Brago deck unfortunately seemed to underperform as he wasn't able to hit a lot of really good enter the battlefield creatures, even though he drew and went super deep into his library. You may recall his deck from the first gameplay video I ever did, where a lot of the comments were, "Why would you post this video? This video is so bad. Why is Brago so strong?" And let's face it, Brago can be very powerful when he has good creatures to bounce. But this game Matt provided more of a disruptive influence, and he was basically keeping me off of playing Dralnu for most of the game, as well as messing with Jeff's Mind Moils. Unfortunately for Jeff, most people have gotten used to his Niv-Mizzet deck, and we can see a lot of the combo pieces coming from a mile away. When things like Mind Moil hit the table, you know he's about to get serious, and you have to do everything in your power to disrupt him. But Jeff isn't a one-trick pony, and he's since learned and added new cards to help him win through other routes other than combo. Cards like the Locust God are in his deck now to help him get a critical mass of hasty insect tokens whenever he wheels multiple times in a turn. Please be sure to tune in every Monday and Thursday at 11 AM Eastern Standard Time for a guaranteed new video. You can also follow me on Twitter at MTGMudsta. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/MTGMudsta. And lastly, you can check me out when I stream at twitch.tv/MTGMudsta. This video is brought to you in part by support from my Patreons. If you're looking for a way to help out the channel, please be sure to visit my Patreon link below. Thank you all for watching this video, and don't forget, friends are just opponents you haven't eliminated yet.